Tuesday, December the 19th at 6 p.m. This meeting is solely for the purpose of the annual financial report and the report of the independent auditors. So please call the roll, wherever you are.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Here.
Councilmember Lucido?
Here.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Here.
Councilmember Owens?
Here.
Mayor Pixley?
Here. So with that, we'll move to our auditors.
All right. Yep,
So
I'm
would
good.
you like to come up here, or are you going to stay there?
Pardon me?
You're going to stay there?
For part of it, and we'll be up for other parts of it, if that's okay. That's how we've handled it in the past, and we thought we'd move forward with that same sort of presentation. Again, my name's Dave Helisek. I'm an audit partner with Plant Moran, and with me this evening are Tim St. Andrew and Stephanie Atkinson. And we are happy to be able to present the results of the financial statement audit for the city of Eastpointe for the year ended June 30th, 2017. You should have before you this evening 3 deliverables. 2 you would have had prior to coming here this evening. The largest being the financial statement itself, the comprehensive annual financial statement. So, we've got an hour, so we'll only spend 3 or 4 minutes per page in this document, and that should probably get us through about the first 6 or 7 pages. Usually that goes over pretty well, apparently. No, we're not going to be spending a bunch of time in this document, but Tim is going to work us through this. The second deliverable is our required communication to those charged with governance, affectionately known to us as our AU 260 and 265 letters. I'm going to be covering that a little bit this evening. And then finally, our graph package, which Stephanie is going to cover in conjunction with Tim's presentation of the financial statement. As we go along this evening, if there's any questions, I guess we'd love to try to answer them as we go along versus waiting to the end, and we can really get into them while we're on topic with any specific questions that you do have. Prior to this evening, Tim and myself did meet with the city manager and the finance director to go through these statements in a great amount of detail. As you know, as part of the audit, the information really included in this document is produced by the city. It is turned over to us to audit. There's a process that Tim will describe, but generally we take this information, and after we audit it, we produce it in a manner that you've got before you today to ensure that the information is presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That meeting that I referred to a minute ago is to ensure when it's turned back over to the city for acceptance that they're in agreement with the information that is included in the document, and to ensure that the information is consistent to that was turned over for audit. So while this information is truly the city's financial information, the only part that's truly Plant Moran's is the audit opinion. And our audit opinion this year is an unmodified opinion, and that opinion is located in the financial section tab of your large document. It is 3 pages in length, and it is an unmodified opinion. And an unmodified opinion is the highest level of assurance that we can give a set of financial statements. What that means is these statements as presented fairly reflect the financial position of the city as of June 30, 2017, and the change in that financial position, or the revenues, the expenditures, the cash flows, and the notes that are included within the statement. It's an opinion. Pardon me?
I didn't want to interrupt. I don't think we have the tab version. If you refer to an
sorry.
area, can you use a page number? That's all. Just 'cause
Well, I have it as page 1 then.
Okay, just making sure. Thank you.
Page 1. So it's the highest level of assurance that we can give, and it's one that we were able to give the city, again, as a result of our audit procedures. Before I turn it over to Tim, Tim and Stephanie, who will be covering the financial highlights, what I thought I'd walk through, just so we don't keep going back and forth between each other, is I'd like to actually start this year's audit presentation in the required communications letter. And I'd just like to walk you through that. One, because there's some things that we need to talk about from a control standpoint, but 2, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the pension and OPEB reform that's been a very hot topic up in Lansing, and how that impact when I believe the governor is going to sign the Public Act tomorrow, how, what kind of impact that will have or could have on the city. So, in the letter, it's a 13-page letter. There's two required communications. The first one is the internal control related matters. So I had mentioned earlier, we do a financial statement audit and we opine on those financial statement numbers. We don't perform what is called an internal control audit. It's not part of the auditing standards. What we do, however, is get information regarding the internal controls. We assess it, we test it, and actually we tailor our audit programs around the strength or, for lack of a better word, the weaknesses in that control system. And if we find anything that rises to a level of what's described in the standards of a significant deficiency or material weakness, we're required to document that and communicate it in writing to this body. So if you take a look at page 3 of, the smaller letter, it says section 1 at the top, internal controls internal control related matters identified in an audit. You will see about 2/3 of the way down the page that we do have a couple of matters that needed to be reported and recorded to this body. The first one is the material weakness, and you can read you can see the bullet point there, but as during our testing and specifically the city's procurement process, we did note during our testing that certain purchases were made during the year that violated the city's purchasing policy, including the bidding requirements and obtaining city council approval prior to entering into the contract. So we did identify that even though there was a system that was set up, a control system that was set up, in this particular instance, in this particular purchase, the city didn't follow that system. And while we report that out as a weakness, our audit procedure doesn't stop there. We go and make sure that, indeed the good or service was received and, was paid for and properly recorded. So that part of it was okay, but we're required to report this out to this body.
Do you have some sort of list that would apply to this? I think in the emails you sent us following up, there's at least one project mentioned.
Yeah,
If I can match the email answers to apply to this, if we can try to do that, I guess.
Yeah, the one case that we did identify was the related to the purchases of the fire hydrants during the year. And that was the only case in this instance that we found based on the other testing that we had performed and the expanded
Okay.
scope that we had.
Okay.
I did have one follow-up to that, because I thought that was just a purchase. Was there a contract related to that? Because the section says including bidding and entering into contract. I just wasn't sure if there was one.
Yeah.
With
So
that.
normally, when there's an agreement to purchase, there would be some sort of formalized contract to purchase that good or service.
Okay.
So what we would use as a contract would be an agreement. What we would term as a contract is an agreement to purchase good or service.
Okay. Now, is that something that you guys took a look at? You took a look at the contract that was with? My question is going to be, it's not a multi-year thing. It was just a one-time expenditure, was my understanding.
Well, I believe that there was actually 3 different components to the fire hydrant purchase. Tim, maybe you can explain a little bit more, but I know that there was the purchase and the installation, and then there was some backfilling of some of the hydrants.
Yeah, I think overall, I'm not sure that there was an official contract or that purchase went through the bidding process. And when we looked at the supporting documentation, it did appear that the installation of the hydrants was done prior to the appropriate approvals, and that's what really led to this comment, is that
Did you find that the fire hydrants had been purchased before the installation?
purchased.
That we had the availability of the fire hydrants, and so when they were putting in the water lines, they just added the fire hydrants?
I think that was part of it. I'm not sure what the intent was. I don't want to speak for anybody, but I think they were already on site doing work, and the idea was based on what were able to find, was that go ahead and install these additional fire hydrants when in fact it should have gone through your normal purchasing process.
So, my question is, if you were down in the hole, how much more would it have cost the city if you had to go back and dig the hole again and put the fire hydrants in later?
That would probably be a question for the city engineer.
How much, do you know how much roughly money was related to this fire hydrant issue?
Off the top of my head, I think it was about $150,000.
Okay.
I don't want to spend time
No, because we
beating this,
talked about
but
it 4 or 5 times already.
that said, I don't know if it'd be appropriate to ask you or administration, since you have the documentation when you looked at it, can you just share that with council? Would you mind emailing that to us, or would that be a more appropriate thing to ask?
Yeah, any documentation we had would have been city records, which we wouldn't retain.
Okay,
So that, anything related to that would be here at the city.
okay, thank you.
Go ahead,
Okay.
please.
The next item related to the significant deficiencies that we observed was, the first one related to bank reconciliations not being performed on a timely manner throughout the year. When we did look at the reconciliations themselves, there wasn't anything that we had saw that had indicated that there was really any problem with the reconciliations. They work, but obviously the importance of having them done timely is if there is an issue that does come up, or if for some reason they wouldn't reconcile, it's easier to identify those items probably closer to the time of any transaction versus waiting a period of days. The last item related to significant deficiency is an IT issue. So as part of the auditing standards, again, we do an assessment of not only the internal control system, but the IT system's general control. So, none of us are technology buffs, but we really need to make sure we understand how the system works as it relates to the accounting records. And, it was noted during our testing is that there were former city employees who still would have had access potentially to the system, and basically their names needed to be withdrawn or prevent some sort of access. Now, I'm not sure they actually could have gotten on without being in City Hall and accessing it, but that's the type of thing we'd want to make sure as part of your procedures is, when somebody does leave the city, that there's a process in place that would take away the ability for those type of logins.
I did have a question regarding this, a little different than the one I emailed ahead of time. The idea has been floated with our finance director to possibly have read-only, limited access for council members if we wanted to be able to look up information in BSNA. Is there any reason that access to us would somehow result in a deficiency or issue with control?
So we can speak to, from an accounting standpoint, I'll let the city attorney speak to anything other than that. On a read-only access, from a pure accounting standpoint, if it prevents you as individuals the ability to go in and make changes to the records, which is really what we're focused on, I don't see under read-only the ability, my understanding is the ability to do that. Anything else related to, council members having access to financial records and, the appropriateness of that, I'd defer to the city attorney.
Okay, thank you.
I'll move on to the second part of the letter, the required communication to those charged with governance. So you may recall prior to the start of the audit, we would have set a communication out to the city council. And we would have laid out essentially what our audit approach was going to be. We would have talked about areas that would be higher risk areas. And when I say higher risk, they'd just be areas that inherently may be more susceptible to misstatement, just generally. And we would have identified that and talked about our audit approach as to how we would minimize those risks to ensure that the financial statements would be reported accurately. As you also know, we give the council the ability to contact us, and if they've got any specific concerns that we can incorporate as part of our audit approach, we will do that as well. This part of the letter really talks about what we found or what we didn't find as a result of the items that we specifically identified in our tailored audit approach. So it's about a 3 or 4 page document, and it's really restating for the most part of some of those initial communications that we would have. In the middle of page 4, really 2/3 down the page, under the significant audit findings, significant audit findings that's what the standard says we have to use, but it's really just talking about accounting practices and things that happened during the audit. Tim's going to talk a little bit about some of the required standards that needed to be implemented during the year. One pretty significant in GASB 74 related to post-employment benefits, and the other, while important, probably not having a significant financial impact for the city or for any community reporting that, and that relates to tax abatement disclosures. On the bottom of page 5, which is the next page, corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So throughout the audit, we may come across certain items that we may suggest to management might need adjustment, and then after meetings, we come to consensus on whether or not they should or shouldn't be made. We've got 2 items that we disclosed here at the bottom of the page. You'll see one related to the bond account at the district court. The financial statement excludes, the trust and agency and bond account activity. And really what that is the court really operates an agency-type fund. Fees are collected over there, remitted back to the city. And then it's got an open bond account. If someone needs to post bond, it's held in an agency capacity until it's repaid. Well, a separate audit is performed on that on an annual basis. It really is a component of the city and could be included as an agency account on the city's financial statements. It's not included, and that really isn't unusual. I do a number of district control units that have single court systems, and they don't report that. It's just to let you to remind the city and the readers that those bond accounts and agencies accounts are reported in a separate financial statement. And then we've got another one related to revenue recognition. So there was a $7,000 item in the major street fund that could have been recorded as revenue under the current standards. Management decided not to record that, and we were okay with that because it wasn't material. It doesn't have a material impact on the statement. When I say not record that, it's not recorded in the June 30, 2017 statements. That revenue will be rolled forward and reported in the June 30, 2018 financial statements. So again, we were okay with that because it just wasn't material and wouldn't have a significant impact to the statements. If I could ask you to turn to section 3, which is on page 7. So we have some other recommendations that we would like you to consider and think about, not necessarily material weaknesses or significant deficiencies, but items that we think may draw, probably need to have additional consideration by the city. So you'll see, and Tim's going to talk about this a little bit later, and the unrestricted net position of the water and sewer fund has decreased significantly in the current year, and that might have been a planned reduction. Which if it was, that's fine. We just, would remind the city on an annual basis when you're doing your rate setting, part of that is trying to establish what we'd call a minimum working capital. So not only are you ensuring that you've got enough revenues that are brought in to cover the costs, all the costs of the water and sewer system, but you've got to make sure that you've got a working capital, because at times the revenues and the receivables might not come in as fast as payments are due. So you want to take a look at that. The internal service fund had an operating loss, and it resulted in a negative net position. So what you want to make sure of in these internal service funds, again, this would be through your budget process, is when you're setting your rates on interfund charges, that they're set really to try to cover the costs of operating that particular fund. And then finally, we did notice, again, kind of reverting back to our payable testing and really some of our capital asset testing. We did note multiple purchases under $5,000 to 2 vendors. When we took a look at that and compared that to the purchasing policy, which is $5,000, there would have been some pretty consistent purchases or payments of, I'm going to say in the $4,800 to $4,900 range, which were falling maybe one right after another. So, as part of our testing, you receive the good and service and all of that was fine. When we see trends like that, we just bring that to your attention to ensure that everyone is living within the spirit of the purchasing policy. If you got a purchasing policy that says, hey, when it hits $5,000, new parameters come into play, and then you see a number of items come in at $4,700, $4,800, $4,900. Again, we just want to make sure that management's aware that we did see that.
Could I ask a question regarding that? I believe these vendors were brought to your attention going into the audit, which is, you said, could you look for this? Did you do any type of targeting for cost or anything between $4,000 and $5,000 to see if is there any way that you did like a targeted search to see if there were other vendors that might have a similar pattern?
So to answer that, so we when we do our testing, we wouldn't necessarily target vendors. What we target is amounts. So we did expand based on the information that we got, expand our testing in both the procurement and the purchase area to look for these sort of trending analysis. It is still done on a sample basis, and on what we saw, we didn't see anything. I think we had like 2 or 3 items that we identified here, but I don't believe anything else came through. Tim?
No. If you don't look at the vendors at all in consideration, I guess I wouldn't understand how you would identify similar issues. I mean, the whole thing is if it's happening multiple times, that's what violates the spirit of the purchasing. And I'm trying to understand the scope of how you did it, because if we did say we wanted to perhaps employ you to go back and take another look or something, I want to know what was done and what could be done, I guess, if we were still concerned about that area.
Again, what we did is we were looking at during our testing, and I think I had talked with Councilman Demonica that we could focus a lot of our testing related to capital assets and accounts payable based on some of the concerns that were brought forth, but at the same time to go on basically a full-blown review of capital assets or purchases was going to be outside the scope of the audit, which we could do, but that would be under a different engagement. What we tried to do is get the spirit of what you were asking for, expand our testing, looking for specific items within a range that was close to the limit of the procurement policy, and again, see if anything that came to our attention would have indicated that we would have seen a similar pattern.
Okay, and that does make sense to me, by the way. Just because we call up and say we have a concern, you can't change what we've agreed to have you do. So if we went, that would be a forensic audit, correct? If we went back and wanted to do something more in line with what I was just saying?
Yeah, it would probably be more of an agreed-upon procedure. So you're asking for something, or a consulting engagement, something specific. Forensic has a kind of a different meaning to it, and to be honest, the 3 of us aren't forensic auditors, so we wouldn't even, we've got this service within our firm, it's just not our specialty. But if there were specifics that you would like, for instance, you say, hey, we want to look at a specific vendor and every payment over X dollars. Of course, we would request the information from finance, and then we would do the procedures that would be agreed upon in an engagement type letter.
Okay.
What was the name of that, you said? What type of audit? Or,
Well, it would depend on the scope. It could be just
Oh.
a straight consulting audit, or it could be
just
an
like
agreed upon procedure.
okay.
It would just depend on the
consulting
wording
was
that
the
we would
word I
like,
didn't
yeah.
hear that. And actually, if I can jump in for 1 second, I mentioned 2 vendors, but actually the 2 mentioned by them, only one of them's here, so I think there's a third one, at least for sure. I believe there's a third one of the 2 I mentioned's not in their email response. So I think there is at least one more, so.
He did say it was one more too. I think you're right.
Okay, I just trying to get a better understanding of how you went in there. Thank you.
So, are there any other questions before I move on to the legislative items, which I just want to be brief because I want to make sure that we cover the financial highlights. So there's on pages 8 through 13, we're really talking about what's happening legislatively. I know that, a lot of information has been passed on, especially related to pension and OPEB reform over the last couple weeks, and it's really been a roller coaster ride. At one point, probably about 10 days ago, if you read a draft of the different versions of what was going through the House and the Senate, they were talking about triggering points, and if certain things weren't funded at a certain level, or if you weren't making certain contributions, there was talks of emergency finance managers and whatnot rolling in. What was finally passed, and I guess what's going to be signed tomorrow is, a different version of it. Really, it's focused on ensuring that you continue to pay on an annual basis what we'd say pay-as-you-go payments due to retirees and healthcare, as well as any new employees that you would offer into a healthcare plan after July 1st of 2018. You'd have to ensure that you're making your normal cost contributions on an annual basis. Again, toned down quite a bit. There's a lot of information that's going to come out. There's going to be a lot of reporting and transparency requirements, and I know Treasury is working on putting some information together currently and trying to get that information out. So that will be required of all local units, cities, villages, townships, among others, throughout the state of Michigan. And Tim's going to talk a little bit about what that number and whether or not perhaps when we take a look at some of those numbers, there could be a triggering point where you could get some additional assistance, and that's what we're calling our additional tools for how to address potentially some of these underfunding. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Tim and Stephanie, who will run through some of the financial highlights.
Thanks, Dave. So what we're going to try to do this year, which is a little bit different from prior years, is I'm going to go through the financial statements and cover maybe 15 pages, just some of the key highlights. And then as we're going through it, as we cover a particular topic, we'll then flip to the graphs that might relate to that topic, so we can try to cover them at the same time. And certainly if you have any questions along the way, or if I don't cover a particular topic that you wanted to discuss, feel free to stop me. But I'll have you start on page 12. So this is the statement of net position. This is what we refer to as the full accrual financial statements, the full accrual balance sheet. So this would include all of your current items, but as well as your long-term items, so your capital assets, your long-term debt, any legacy costs that you've reported, which to this point is only the net pension liability. And I'd like to point you to, it's probably 2/3 of the way down in the assets section. You'll see a line for net OPEB asset. And going across, you'll see there's under the governmental activities column, a balance of $113,000. So when I bring this up, because the rules surrounding OPEB are changing, phase 1 in this year, phase 2 is in fiscal year 18. So under the current rules for your OPEB, your other post-employment benefit, the city has an actuary calculate your total OPEB liability, and they amortize that liability over 30 years. And each year, the actuary provides the city an annual required contribution. And if the city makes that annual required contribution, nothing happens. If you pay more, you would have a net OPEB asset, which is what you have now. This is what the $113,000 represents. If you pay less than that, you would have a net OPEB liability. So it was really on a year-by-year basis, but on a cumulative basis too over time. Now, beginning in fiscal year 18, we're getting rid of those rules, and now the city has to record your net OPEB liability. So it doesn't matter what you've paid in or on an annual basis. They look at your total liability, they compare that to what you currently have on hand to fund that liability, and that difference is now going to get recorded on this statement as a liability.
So is there, it's gonna go from like 6 million altogether at the bottom to like some huge negative number then?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
So that as it stands today, that net OPEB liability is $39.6 million. So a year from today, when we're sitting here, you're going to see a new $39 million liability sitting on this statement. So to your point, yes, the $5.9 million at the bottom there will be a deficit of, call it $33 million, everything else being the same.
How come the pension's not part of that?
So the pension, that's the second thing I would point out. So if you keep scrolling down on the page, it's the second to the bottom line under the liability section.
It is there.
So going all the way across, you'll see that's the $43.5 million would be your net pension liability. So right now, your pension system is 48% funded. Your OPEB system is 17% funded. And this isn't just impacting the city of Eastpointe. These are impacting a lot of different communities. Pension, probably not as much because you've been required to fund pension. OPEB, many communities just began funding that recently, and if you were to do a survey, you'd find a lot of communities at 0% funded. So a lot haven't funded it at all. So to be in 17%, it's not a great spot to be in, but at least you've started funding that liability.
So is this dependent on current actuary figures for 2017, 2016 for 17?
This is as of June 30 of 17, and now one of the pages that I'll cover is the footnote. So the liability is based on a lot of estimates that the actuary makes, and once we get to that page, we do have to disclose a sensitivity analysis.
Because we took a number of steps to reduce the OPEB responsibilities, so I was wondering whether the actuary took those into consideration.
Yes, they would have.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. So if we move on to page 15, cover the governmental funds. And we'll focus on the general fund, but I will touch on major and local streets while we're on here. So on page 15, if you could look towards the bottom in the fund balance section, the general fund did end the year with fund balance of $11 million. And as you can see here, there are 5 categories of fund balance. We have non-spendable, which would be any assets held for resale, so that would be any tax reversion properties that the city has on hand, and prepaid expenses, and then a long-term receivable. So it's fund balance, but you can't spend it. It's not in a spendable form. And then moving down, we do have committed fund balance, and you can see there are 6 items here. All 6 items are calculated in accordance with the city's fiscal management plan, and these would be consistent, at least the categories, consistent with prior years. We have assigned fund balance, which represents next year's OPEB annual required contribution of $2.4 million. And then we have the unassigned, which is really what's left over that can be spent at your discretion of $1.9 million. And if we turn to page 17, we can see the income statement, a change from 16 to 17 in that fund balance. So starting at the top, your 2 main revenue sources would be your property taxes and the SMORSA charge. Both of those are up about 2% from 2016, which represents the roughly 2% increase in taxable value that the city experienced this year. Moving on down to the expenditure section, looking at total expenditures, the general fund ended the year at $19.8 million. It's relatively consistent with prior year. It is up mainly due to just inflationary reasons. And then going to the bottom, you can see the net change. You began the year with $8.9 million of fund balance, and you ended the year with the $11 million of fund balance. And before I turn it over to Stephanie to cover a few graphs, I thought we could just go to page 73 real quick. Thought it might help if you saw the 73 will be the general fund budget to actual statement. And if you compare, really, I'm looking at the right three columns, so the amended budget, actual, and then the variance. And if you go third line from the bottom, you can see that the amended budget, the city expected to add to fund balance in the amount of $300,000. The actual was about $2 million, so there's a $1.7 million variance there to the good. And $150,000 of that, if you look on the total revenue line, $150,000 relates to net revenue that was over budget. So that's pretty close on a $22 million budget. You were right on the revenue. On the expenditure side, the two large variances would be in the police and fire categories. So you can see on the right column there, the $614,000 variance for police and $336,000 variance for fire. So in speaking with the city management on the reasons for these variances, most of it has to do with just personnel vacancies and retention issues, but there was also a fire rescue vehicle that was budgeted in 17. It sounds like it didn't come in, and that will be received in fiscal year 18. And then going back to page 17, again, real quick before Stephanie goes through the general fund. Major and local streets. For major streets, the city added $339,000 to fund balance, and local streets added $226,000. And the fund balance in the street funds, it really does fluctuate, and it's really based on the timing of the projects that are being completed, and so those will go up and down based on those projects. So before we move on to the next statement, Stephanie could jump in here and cover a few of these graphs. I won't be in great detail. I think I covered most of that going through these, but she'll at least go through the trends from the current year compared to the prior 2 years.
All right. So if we can start on page 2. The way these graphs are set up is it's going to show you the trends over the last few years. This first graph on page 2 shows revenue by source, which has been pretty consistent with the exception of the of SMORSA, which was established in 2016. If you move on to the next page, this is going to show you the trend of general fund expenditures. The majority of the expenditures would be public safety, second being general government. The third page is going to show you the trend of annual expenditures compared to fund balance. Fund balance as a percent of annual expenditures has been going up over the last few years. The next page, as Tim had described on page 15 of the financial statements, this is just going to show you how fund balance is broken out by the categories non-spendable, restricted, committed, assigned, and unassigned.
What's I see there's like the new assigned. Was that what's the assigned part again?
The assigned, that is the anticipated annual required contribution in fiscal year 18 that the city will have to make for the OPEB.
Okay. Oh, and it's just that.
Yes.
Okay. Oh yeah, from back on page 15. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right, so if we jump to, and I'll try to cover the rest of these briefly. I want to leave some time for questions. So if we look at page 19 and 20, I know we've already covered the water fund, but as Dave mentioned, I think this is one fund that you guys really have to look at, pay attention to. You can see that the cash balance is down to $2,900 at year end. The unrestricted net position is down to a pretty low level. There's negative working capital, which is your current assets less your current liabilities. And there's a due to other funds of $4 million. So other funds, mainly the general fund, actually had to transfer in some money into this fund to be able to cover some of the cost of operations this year. And if we move to, any questions on water and sewer before I move on?
I have a question. Just because you get out and about to all the different communities and everybody else is going through approximately the same thing because of the increases with the GLWA that were unanticipated for their capital expenses, do you see any change at all in the GLWA in the next year? Are they going to be reducing the amount of charges that are going to come to local communities, or is it just dependent on your location and your utilization?
I think the answer is probably it depends on the two factors you just mentioned. Now, if I had to bet, I would doubt that they're going to reduce the charges to the locals, because they obviously have a massive system that they're looking to maintain too. So I wouldn't expect them to go down. I think how much of an increase will depend on those two factors.
Because initially it was going to be a 4%, and then they attacked a 10% onto the 4%, and then there was a increase in addition to that. So it's really kind of hard to predict number one, what your water utilization is going to be, and then the other affecting factors.
And I think that's important what I mentioned earlier when you're going through your rate setting analysis, that you establish that working capital number as well. So you're just not trying to set your rates to cover just current year costs. I mean, that's an outstanding point as far as the rate structure itself, but you also keep in mind, are there unanticipated breaks that happen? As we know, that can be costly. Are there any other costs that come out through the year, and do you have the resources to cover those costs on a very short-term basis? So, again, the need to ensure when you're doing that analysis to include some sort of working capital component, so you've got monies on reserve.
I guess I had one other question also, and I don't know whether it's the appropriate time, but because you're so up to date with what's happening in the legislature, do you see any increases at all in the revenue sharing coming back to local governments? Because that's the reason why OPEB and pensions have been underfunded.
So, yeah, and I think that was made clear by the MML, the MTA, and MAC, and a lot of their lobbying efforts. So they were pretty much on board, and I think on record, hoping for, if there was anything significant that was going to come out of the pension OPEB reform that they were trying to address, a matching revenue type item. I can tell you, Senate Bill 686, there was nothing, which is really that 13 bill package, the one that really does address pension and OPEB. So we don't have any better information. As you know, the state's on a September year-end, their budget's established. I think we've got some information in that letter that I didn't cover as far as what the revenue anticipations were year over year. But as you know, they have revenue sharing conferences. I think the next one might be in January, where they're anticipating what the revenues might be for the upcoming year. Maybe on a positive note, and not necessarily related to pension and OPEB, is where LCSA is, the Local Community Stabilization Authority. Were you going to cover that, Tim? Okay. So you might recall with personal property tax reform, personal property tax was basically pulled out, and there was going to be some sort of reimbursement, and it was really sold on at least 100% reimbursement in the early years to cover those lost personal property tax revenues. In year one, which would have been the city's fiscal year, June 30, 2016, there would have been a revenue payment. There had been a revenue payment 1 year ago, approximately October of 2016, which would have been in this fiscal year, but it was overfunded. The LCSA, there was monies put aside to do these reimbursements. There was more money put aside than there was needed to fully refund local units, and those excess monies were actually returned to the local units. There was a formula that I went through, and so there was some excess monies. It was a repeat performance this year in 2017. And in fact, the formula changed a little bit as far as the refunding, and it looks like there actually would have been a little bit more monies that were available for returning to local units. However, the pie was split a little bit differently. We haven't seen the formula as to how that was done yet. I don't know that that's been made available. Last year, they did that. They did make that available. My understanding is it is coming. Whether you can count on something like that for next year, I guess from a budgetary standpoint, I probably wouldn't include it. Because I think everyone's very aware, when I say everyone, the legislature is very aware, that it's been overfunded the last 2 years, and I think they're keeping an eye on it. So to my recollection, I guess it's a long-winded answer, I wouldn't anticipate anything extra coming along. If it does, we're pretty tied in, and we'll try to shoot something out to you and let you know.
Can I ask about two numbers that one of them we discussed a minute ago, but that jumped out to me, that might jump out to someone else, that on page 20, that general and administration number, the 4.6 million. I know it took me a while to understand, but that was a lot higher than previous years, and that was just related to retirement then, if you could explain that again.
Sure. So, so most of that would be related to what I'll refer to as the GASB 68 pension expense. So it's an accounting entry. Cash for this particular increase wouldn't have gone out the door. So if I can, maybe it'll be easier if you can go to page 55. Everybody there? Page 55. So the table on top, you can see we have our total pension liability, the net pension liability, and then the net pension liability. So if you go to the bottom of that table, the city has a net pension liability of $43.5 million at December 31st, 2016. That $43 million needs to get split or allocated throughout the city. So some of it might go to, related to police and fire, public works, in this case, water and sewer. And the way that the allocation was split, it's based on actual retirement contributions, which was based on the ARC that the actuary provides to the city. And that ARC, in the way that it's split, can change each year. And in this case, in this year, there were more employees or more work done in the water and sewer fund. So when you look at that allocation of that ARC this year, and I'm going to use round numbers here, I don't recall the specifics, but 10% of it was allocated to water and sewer, whereas last year it was only 5%. And next year it might drop down to 5%. So this number is always going to fluctuate, but because more was allocated to water and sewer this year, a bigger piece of that $40 million was recorded in water and sewer. And if you were to compare this year's balance sheet to last year's, you would see that that net pension liability went from, I think, $2.5 million last year to $5 million this year. The offset to that increase in liability is a debit to the expense, and that's why you're seeing that particular line item this year jump out, because it is a lot higher than last year, and it's because of that GASB 68, the pension allocation.
And just to piggyback on that and staying with page 55, so we've got the big chart here, but you'll notice right under the bolding paragraph, it says for the year ended June 30, 2017, the city recognized pension expense of $5.8 million. So if you keep that number in mind and look, maybe 5 or 6 numbers up where you'll see the contributions from the employer. So that the contributions from the employer, which in this case is the city, was just over $3 million. So because of all the other things going on within the fund, experience levels, changes in assumptions, there's other things that impact the expense other than just contributions. So there's really a difference, and there will always be a difference between the contributions that are actually made to the plan with the expense that's recorded within the financial statements.
And then the other number was page 19, which I think I only saw like this year and last year when I went back a couple years, the due to other funds for the water and sewer fund that we said earlier. The the 4.075 million. What did that mean again, due to other funds?
So that essentially means that other funds had to contribute cash into the water and sewer fund. And I can't speak to the specifics on why the money was transferred. We just make sure that, in most of it, I think $3.2 million of that was from the general fund, so it's making sure that, we trace the transfer, that we see the money go from general to water and sewer. And if you were to look in the general fund, you'll see a due from, maybe not for an equal amount because there might be other funds involved, but that $4 million would also be on the general fund side. But it's really a subsidy that the water and sewer fund needed this year.
It's a short-term borrowing.
Yeah.
Is at least that's the anticipation, is that the monies will be or should be paid back to the general fund.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
And I will point out, while we're on page 19, the garbage and rubbish collection fund. So you can see at the bottom there is a total net deficit in that fund as well. And if you just work your way up that column, you will see on the investment in South Macomb Disposal Authority, there is a negative $2.1 million. And what that represents is the city's estimated liability for the post-closure and remediation costs for the landfill. And so that liability, that estimate needs to get booked today, unfortunately. So that's driving that fund into a deficit.
Where was the 2.1 million? Sorry.
It's
The
the,
Garbage and Rubbish Collection Fund
Oh, I'm on.
on page 19.
sorry, we're back on page
I was just
19.
one page off, yeah. All right, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So I will end, I'll cover a couple more pages in the footnotes, and I'll have you jump back to the note 10, the pension footnote, on page 57. When we started talking about pension and OPEB, we did say that these numbers are guesses that the actuary is making. For pension on page 57 at the bottom, you can see we do disclose a sensitivity analysis. Right now, MERS, when they're calculating the city's net pension liability or total pension liability, they are using a discount rate of 8%. And what this is intended to do is show you that if they either reduce that assumption by 1% or increase it by 1%, what that does to your net pension liability. And you can see that the impact is, if they reduce it, it would add to that liability about $9 million. So it is a significant assumption, and it's relevant because just in the past 2 years, MERS did reduce their assumption by 0.25%, and it did have a significant impact on that liability and will have a significant impact on your future actual cash out to MERS to be able to fund that liability. And then on a similar note, on page 62, so we mentioned on the first page that we covered there the net OPEB liability. This is note 13. Will have the details on the OPEB plan. It will have expanded disclosures if you were to compare this year's financial statements to last year's. And this footnote is as a result of the city implementing GASB 74 this year. And again, the $39 million when GASB 75 next year is implemented will show up not just in this footnote but also on your full accrual balance sheet. And on page 64, we also actually have two sensitivity analysis for the OPEB liability. The first one, similar to pension, relates to the discount rate. So the actuary this year used 6% for OPEB, and again, it's plus or minus 1%. What is that impact? And either way, you can see that it is significant, and it'll significantly reduce or increase the city's net OPEB liability. And moving down to the second table, another significant assumption that the actuary has to make is the healthcare cost and what that trend rate is. So the actuary is currently using 8%, decreasing down to 5%, I think after 8 to 10 years. And again, it's if they reduce that by 1% or increase it by 1%, what's the impact? And again, similar to the discount rate, it's significant. So each year you should look at these assumptions, make sure they're reasonable, because they do have a big impact on that liability that will get recorded next year. So in the interest of time, I think I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
I had one question related to pension and OPEB. And I don't know if there's a audit perspective or if we have to have a discussion with our finance director. I believe Macomb County bonded out something like 300 million, invested it, and they're using that to fund retirement because they get more back from the investment than they do on the percentage for the bond. Does that have a negative impact, having that, like an outstanding bond or something, if we chose to do something similar to try to fund our pension and OPEB?
Yeah, so from an audit perspective, we probably don't have an opinion on it. But I've had a community that actually is a smaller one, versus a county that has taken the same approach. So they did analysis on what the return would be from issuing bonds. Obviously, there's an interest rate cost to that as well. And especially as it relates to OPEB, which is what they were focused on. As I think we all know, the contributions to OPEB, there's an actual required contribution that's provided. However, the contributions to the plan are not required. I mean, you pay what you can, but unlike pensions, which were required by the Constitution the Michigan Constitution, that they be funded, OPEB contributions are not. Part of that analysis is when you issue debt, really what you're trying to do, what you're ending up doing is you're exchanging these contributions, that really are at the will of the city, and really they're more of a fixed rate now. Now that's debt, you've got to make the payment. Will they earn more? Yes. But what it does do is ensure you're continuing to make contributions to the plan and funding these OPEB promises. So, there's clearly a positive aspect to it, but the other side is now you've got a fixed cost that you're going to continue to budget for however long the bond issuance is done. So, there's been a lot of analyses done by local units of government, and what I can say, even the ones that have done it haven't bonded fully for it. They might take a look at their liability and say, maybe we'll bond 75% of it, really to get that, to get those dollars flowing, because as you had indicated, the return on those are not subject to Public Act 20, which is, really how you invest your general fund and water and sewer monies. They're subject to Public Act 314, which is more like the pension monies, which you can start getting investments in equities and higher rating bonds, and so there's the opportunity to have higher returns, which is a good thing, but also there's risk involved, which means the return could be lower. So there are communities out there who have done that. From our perspective, when we've been asked, we help run the numbers. We really don't give an opinion on what the right thing to do for any local unit is related to that.
Are they other communities of our same population size?
I have one that is, just one. I only have, to be honest, I only have one that's actually done it.
And the only counties that have done that are Oakland and Macomb, correct?
All that I'm aware of. And I couldn't speak to local units. I can only speak to the ones that I have experience with.
Would you mind sharing that with us at some point? Because I'd like our finance director just to maybe touch base and say,
Sure,
hey, how's that working over there?
I can get that to Ms. Bond, or?
Yes. Sure.
Okay.
And I don't have anything else.
Anyone else? have
Nope, I have
I talked to you a couple of weeks ago in person, so I'm different.
Mr. DeMonico, do you have anything? Kathy, do you have any comments? All right, I need a motion, please, to receive and file the annual financial report.
Madam Mayor, I will move to receive and file the City of Eastpointe's comprehensive annual financial report for the year ending June 30th, 2017.
Support.
Move and support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido.
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley.
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico.
Yes.
And that would open it up to the hearing of the public. Does anyone out in the audience have any comments related to the audit? Mr. Creech?
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I know one thing, there was a whole lot of things discussed here that not went over my head, but there were so many figures that were thrown out. Is there any possible way that I can get a copy of all this so I can read it and even understand some of it? But I know there was a lot of discussion on the water. There was a lot of discussion on the rates, and you were talking about, between Detroit itself on their rates and as to the city per rates per water. I mean, there again, too, if the public could possibly, or you could somewhere get it, in the last 5 years between the city, how much they went up, rates, period, and the city. And I know there was a gentleman here, well, Randy, I know he's not here, I'm not going to pick on him, but he just said the same thing about it, that the city hasn't had a water increase in the last 5 years. I think he might be wrong, but there again, too, as I said, I'd like to see if the public could get an eye on that. And as to thank you, Cardi, and thank you, Mike. As to the vendors, I think somewhere along the line, as discrepancy, the money itself, whatever was spent, under $5,000 was close enough to it, should be looked into and looked into properly, because there again, too, there's a lot of things somewhere along the line between checks and balances. If the council itself or the mayor can't get into the records per se to talk to the financial department, these things, as I said before too, as time invariance, because it might happen here, and depends on when it's billed and how it's spent and who puts it down. That's how things sort of slip through the cracks, but quite a few of them slipped through the last time. I hope it doesn't, but as I said, thank you. It was a pretty good, it was a good report. But I tell you, there's a lot of stuff that didn't go over my head, but it was so fast. I'd like to see it all, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Seeing none, the hearing of the public is closed. Move to mayor and council reports. We'll start with Mr. Kleinfeld.
I just want to say thank you for coming and speaking to us and answering our email questions. I know we sent kind of a lot over to you, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Ms. Lucille?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you also. I know you guys put a lot of time and you deal with all of us and our questions, so I do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Ms. Monique Owens?
Well, I also want to say thank you. Also, like I said 2 weeks ago, you took time out unexpectedly. I called you, and on your lunch break, we sat down for like an hour and looked over this audit report. So thank you for taking time out to, get me to understand a lot of these things that I didn't know before. So I appreciate that.
Mr. DeMonico?
All right. Yep. Thank you, Stephanie, Tim, Dave, thank you. And also, can Ms. Marucci, can we possibly make a few hard copies of this for a resident to keep? Just maybe a limited amount, like 5 or something.
We
for-
can, and I do believe the audit is already on the website, and we can make extra copies.
And I was going to say that, yeah, the audit's available. Well, a few residents will not.
I understand. We'll make 5 copies available for first come, first served for people who wish.
I'd like to see them put in the library in the reference section so people can review them there, but it's also on the website, so.
Sure, yeah, just where our normal agendas are. The audit's just right next to it, says special meeting or audit meeting or something. That's all, Madam Mayor.
Anything else?
Just, if I may, the audits will be uploaded electronically by the end of the year on the Treasury's website. Just in addition to what you're offering here, and if you go onto the Treasury website, for all of those who are interested, I don't know how far it goes back, but there's multiple years of the city's financial statement available.
Okay.
And the mayor doesn't have anything else to say over and above what we've always said. Mr. Halasek, we appreciate you. You've been our auditor for, I think, as long as I've been a city council person. So I appreciate you. We always learn something when you come here. And Mr. St. Pierre, We've loved having you. Thank you for answering all the questions from everybody and being so willing to share your time. And Stephanie, was that the name? Thank you so much. It's always scary when you have to come and do a presentation to City Council, but you did a great job. Thank you very much for all of you. And with that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Support.
Move and support. Please call a roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley.
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido.
Yes.
All right, we'll have 5 minutes on Tuesday, December the 19th, and it's 7:15. We're running 15 minutes late because of the previous audit meeting. So we move to have the invocation given by Sarah Lucido, please.
Dear God, as we near this most special time of the year, let us all take a moment to reflect upon our own lives. While we journey through this life, we have the opportunity to give or to take, to destroy or build, to help others or to ignore them. We continue to be thankful for the many blessings that you have given us, and let us be ever mindful that the decisions we make not only affect the people of today, but future generations as well. Please take us down the path that leads us to the betterment of those who follow us. It is in your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, Council, if you'd like to join me down there. Sarah won't be coming because she broke her ankle. Technical difficulty. This is kind of a sad day for all of us, because today we're saying goodbye to our Director of Public Safety, Mr. John McNeilance. So John, if you'd like to come forward, please. So, whereas John McNeilance was hired by the City of Eastpointe as the city's first Director of Public Safety on April 29th, 2013. He had been retired. We pulled him out of retirement to come and help us out. And whereas Director McNeilance has held a law enforcement position for the past 35 years, and whereas Director McNeilance was appointed as the city's representative on the Southeast Regional Emergency Services Authority, named CERISA. And whereas Director McNeilance was appointed as the city's representative on the courts and the Law Enforcement Management Information System, called CLEMIS, on their advisory committee, and whereas John McNeilance received a Bachelor of Arts from the University of Michigan in 1976. We were classmates. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed that the City Council does extend their appreciation to Director John McNeilance for his service to the City of Eastpointe and the allegiance to the residents, and extend to him best wishes on his retirement. In witness whereof we have hereunto set our hand and caused the great seal of the City of Eastpointe in the state of Michigan to be affixed at Eastpointe, Michigan on this 19th day of September 2017. We are going to miss you, sir. I know you want to say
I think Joe really wants a picture of us.
Can we do a quick shot right here that way Councilmember Lucido can be That's how she likes it.
That's right.
Okay, perfect. She's got to be ready.
Yes.
Are you ready? That was perfect.
There we go. I felt like I was too high. I'm like, I should sit down, and then it'd be like more.
Absolutely.
Would you like to say something here so the audience at home can?
Yes, I will. Mayor and council, I want to express my gratitude for the opportunity that's been given me to serve here in Eastpointe. I want to thank the residents for their support. I've had a very supportive mayor for these almost 5 years, and every council has been very supportive of me and of the police department and the fire department. The city is very fortunate to have a lot of dedicated professionals that are dedicated to keeping them safe every day in both the police and fire department. It's been a pleasure to work with them, and I'll miss the people, but looking forward to retirement. Certain that there's lots of good things going forward for the city of Eastpointe, and I wish you all the best.
You can stop by once in a while and say hello.
I will. Thank you.
Good luck to you. All right, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Here.
Councilmember Lucido?
Here.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Here.
Councilmember Owens?
Here.
Mayor Pixley?
Here. Item 2 is the approval of the agenda. We have a motion to approve the agenda as is.
Madam Mayor, I'll motion to approve the agenda as is.
Support.
Any support? Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes. We move to the hearing of the public. Does anyone wish to be heard at this time? Sir?
Thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the mayor, Madam Mayor, and city council members for allowing us to speak today. By way of introduction, my name is Antonio D. Tuttles. I am an attorney. My client here, Mr. Salah, who owns Albert's Furniture and have been owning Albert's Furniture for almost 30 years, currently has an issue with the parking. Not currently, he's had an issue with parking for some period of time. So what I do is I will give you all some exhibits, and I'll let Mr. Salah explain to you his situation. Thank you much.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity.
Please speak into the microphone. You might have to stretch it out a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you. I have been here for 30 years, and I do pay $17,000 a year in city taxes. And I haven't had any problem with parking all these years until about a year ago. All of a sudden, the postal workers started parking directly behind my store. And if you look at the pictures there, you see they take up every spot from nearly 7 a.m. to up to 5 p.m. I've sat and watched on my security cameras customers literally circle the lot and leave. So it is costing us business. I've tried every avenue to talk to them, and they were blatantly telling me no. There's a north lot that's north of my store, and there's a lot of room for them to park there. They'd only have to walk maybe 50 or 100 feet more to get to work. They refuse. Then there's another parking lot adjacent to the post office on the south side that's been empty forever, and that would even put them closer to the post office. They refuse to park there. Income tax season is coming, and we have the library there, we have Albert's Furniture, we have Aaron's Rentals, and we have patrons using the post office. They need the parking lot directly behind my store to do business. I'm expecting up to 20 customers at one time during the income tax season, and it is necessary for me to get those customers so I can continue to pay taxes, pay bills, and Also, I'm trying to achieve my goals of having my kids take over who have graduated with their master's degree and want to take over, but I don't want them in a situation where they're going to lose. I want them to win. And that's the main issue is income tax season is coming, and we need to do something about it now.
To alleviate Mr. Salah's issue with parking, there's two possible things that the city council can do. They can make the city, the parking structure, because it's a city parking lot, it's a municipal parking lot. They can make that parking lot 2-hour parking. That would prevent the postal workers from parking there all day long. They can do that, or they can give Mr. Salah a number of Albert's customer parking only slots in back of his, in the rear of his business. No one can park in the front because the parking in front is no parking, because in front of Mr. Salah's business is a turnaround, and so no one can park there. So the only parking is in the parking in the rear. Thank you.
Before I go, I want to say thank you to Mr. Marucci. I've called him maybe 100 times during the last year, and he's been more than kind and really exemplifies what a civil worker is, that he's willing to help and he's kind. And I thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
And we'll look into it. Thank you for coming forward and stating your problem.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else wish to be heard? Mr. Creech.
Harvey Creech, resident of East Detroit. Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I come before you tonight to ask you, on the behalf of Eastpointe residents, if you could possibly put the Recreation Committee back in effect. Before RARE was initiated or brought to the city of Eastpointe and Roseville, we had a Recreation Committee. The Recreation Committee overseen, went and looked. They seen what our parks were for and what we needed. Right now, at the present time, Mary Van Buren, Mary Van Haren, excuse me, has too many hats to wear. She is the president, parks administrator, and the thing about that is too, as I said, she has building. She has a lot of things to look for. If you could initiate the committee itself, the committee could get out there, oversee our parks, take a look, and really see what they need. There's so many things that we could use. Like I say, typically we could do. We still have that play school over here at the city. It's sitting back in the department. By the time we get a chance to use it, it's not going to be worth nothing. And like I said before too, we got shuffleboard courts with no shuffleboard equipment. I've asked for it. We still don't have it. We got fences that are in badly need of repair. It's just totally unbelievable. We need playground equipment. We need some repaired, and we need new equipment. There's so many things. Like I said before too, I want to see this city. I want to see it grow. I want to see it improve with a little bit of help. And I love it. The council is always asking for people to join. Some people come up here want to join. I don't know exactly what the problem is, but the council doesn't want them or doesn't need them. There's people out here in this city, I think, if you forego it and look at them and ask them, they will come out and help you out. Because I know I've asked 2 or 3 times to get everybody. Joel's doing a good job. We've been through the parks. He's doing a great job. He's doing a great job at RARE. But now, as I say, Joe was at the meeting just last week, and he sees what we might be facing. Well, I'm looking at it right now. We're going to have a $1.3 million rainy day fund in less than 3 years at RARE. We were totally broke. Now we have this money that maybe I'm saying to get back into. I know right now RARE donates $90,000 a year. They take $45,000 and give it to Roseville. They take $45,000 and give it to East Detroit. There's more money in the fund, but one thing about it, RARE is an entity. It's time, please, if you can, talk to Joe. Joe's going to be there. If you can help him out, get into it, get into the situation, help the residents, get us back to where we belong. We've got buildings that never were completed. The money was supposed to be there in capital improvement. The jobs didn't get done. I'd still looking for the money, still like to see it go back get the buildings back in tune, and get a lot of things that the city needs. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Creech. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Sir, please state your name.
Adele Toma of Eastpointe. I met a man named Sabu from India. He just came here. I met him at a homeless shelter on 8 Mile, and he's staying at a Berry Manor right now. And he asked me to give him some advice about living in America since I came here from another country. So I wrote down that he can't come because he's disabled now. He's in Berry Manor. So I told him I'd write the top 10 things he needs to survive in America. In India, where he's from, there's many vegetarians. Here in America, Mr. Sabu, we murder billions of cows and chickens. We turn our backs from their screams and cries for help as their throats are slit and they choke, grasping for air. But the ends justify the means because we got to have a hamburger. Remember, we only care about dogs and cats in America. Number 2, tax dollars from your paycheck here goes to support these phony wars as we drop bombs on terrorists that we created and funded. Just smile and say we support the troops. Again, that's another marketing term created by the military-industrial complex. Plus, you'll be called a hippie, Sabu, if you want peace. Number 3, tax dollars from your check will go to Israel, billions every year. Half of our Senate and Congress have dual citizenship in Israel and are basically Israeli agents who infiltrated us from the inside. But don't talk bad about Israel, Sabu, because it's God's people, so we have to give him our money. Number 4, a Norway professor, Van Jules, said America should have roads of gold, sports centers for the youth, no homelessness or hunger problems, and a check for each American for $3,270. But sorry, that money went to these wars in Israel.
You have 30 seconds left.
Number 5, the CIA is a terrorist organization caught selling drugs and weapons. Don't ever question the Holocaust in any detail because they'll call you an anti-Semite. Number 7, 2 criminal gangs run America. They're called the Republican and Democrats. Only vote for Libertarian and Green Party, Sabu. Don't ever question 9/11 because they'll call you a conspiracy theorist. A coin created by the CIA after the JFK assassination. So just smile.
Your time is up, but you can come back to the second hearing of the public if you'd like. Thank you. Does anyone else wish to be heard?
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Council, Administration. Walt Jakubiak, Eastpointe resident. I've been up here numerous times in the past complaining about the way our streets were plowed. I've had snow piled back on my sidewalk. I've even had it hit the house when the plow went by. Now, this past week, the plow came by and did an exemplary job. And I only felt that it was proper and fitting to come here and pay homage to him. I hope he's listening, but I want to thank him for doing such a great job because I've got 2 houses to plow. My neighbor went to Florida, and I'm angry because he didn't take me. But, he made it, he did such a great job that I had very little cleanup, and I definitely appreciated seeing I'm pushing 75. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jakubiak. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Anyone else? Anyone else? Seeing none, the first hearing of the public is closed. We have no approval of the minutes today, no scheduled hearings, no unfinished business, so we'll move on to reports from administration. We'll start with our acting city manager, Mr. Narucci.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Several items. One is the City Hall will be closed on December 25th and 26th, so people need to know that, and the same thing holds true with the way we celebrate New Year's. We'll be closed on the Monday and Tuesday. And remember that we have switched the council meeting to January 3rd. So we'll note that on the, I think, already Christmas, I think, is notified on the entranceways of the building. We'll notify people about New Year's, and the same thing with the council meeting has been changed. Also, RARE's been spoken about several times tonight. RARE's website was under construction, and it went live today. So I viewed it. The one link that the rare/mi.org something really strange happened when I clicked onto it, and so did Ms. Hicks when she clicked onto it. But if you want to see the RARE website, go to recreationauthority.com for now, until we figure out what's wrong with the rare/mi.com. It was something that was welcome, and about 20 languages appeared on the screen. So I guess that's good, but you couldn't go to a second screen. So that's all that I have. And with respect to snow plowing, for every person like Mr. Jakubiak who either steps forward or makes a call or whatever, we have persons who call and say, I can't believe you're plowing the way you're plowing. And we hear comments such as you made at the beginning of your, about snow going up on the sidewalks. And we are probably cursed with some sidewalks that are only 2 or 3 feet from the back of curb. And when you drive a plow and snow is rolling off at 15 miles an hour, the sidewalk's going to be covered, the approach is going to be covered, and it could be that the lawn behind the sidewalk also receives snow. And the one thing that people need to remember is when the people are plowing, they're not so much plowing for today, they're plowing for a month or two from now. So if you plow slow, all the snow will pile up at the curb, and when you go to plow a month or 2 months from now, the new snow won't be able to get over the old snow, so the streets will never be clear. So, but we have not, that I know of, have never recorded a truck going 25, 35, or 40 miles an hour down the street. It'd be pretty hard to do with our tight streets and a truck that weighs probably about 30 tons when it's loaded with a load of salt, and it's probably 40 feet long. So we ask you, please move your cars at all times, but especially during a snow emergency, because it's required, please remove your car from the street. It's the only way they can plow safely and with no damage and properly. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Anyone have questions for Mr. Marucci?
I have one question in regards to that. If there is a household that doesn't have enough parking lot for their cars, is there a place for them to park?
I know of no place other than hopefully they may be close to some type of private parking lot or some type of municipal parking lot, in the sense of, we have several of them. One was referred to earlier, like on Moak Street, which is
Okay.
the street. There's a parking lot at 10 Mile and Gratiot that's municipal owned behind the businesses. You know, Spindler Park, most of the parks have some type of on-site. We're not gonna have a problem unless people try to use it for long-term storage. But there probably are a few homes that don't have a place to park. I say try to work something out with your neighbors to even get your car off the street for that period of time. It's critical. I mean, if you've ever been in a truck and you see these people try to maneuver these trucks in and out, it's almost impossible. And I don't know how we don't have more accidents, you know, hitting parked cars, because the truck with the blade is gonna be 10, 11 feet wide.
12 foot.
Okay, so you have to, it's up to you to move. You can't use the, I don't have a driveway, my driveway's full, or whatever the case may be. You've got to get the car off the street, because it's how we plow safely and clear it for use.
Thank you.
I had one item, Mayor Pixley. I was interested if the rest of council's interested in another capital improvement, another CIP meeting like we had this past January 10th, so we could plan.
And I reached out with Mr. Pangori. We just have to get on dates. My assumption is the council wants to have another 5-year CIP.
Right. We always do the capital improvement first.
And
the
I'm-
goals and objectives, and then the capital improvement.
I'm assuming on a Tuesday, on an off Tuesday?
Well, I mean, like a whole separate meeting like
Yes.
we did last time.
January
That-
10th.
Last year was the first time I'd ever been part of one, so I didn't know.
Let us see what our Tuesdays are, but we usually try to do everything on a Tuesday, because you usually have your Tuesday set aside for some type of regular or special meeting. So
Perfect.
probably by this Friday, I'll be able to get you a list of dates or two.
Are we still waiting to set dates for, I'm sorry, the tour and the joint meeting, or was that already set?
They're not set. I'm waiting to hear. I've heard from 2 or 3 people, depending on the meeting. So it was I believe it was 29th or 30th of January, Monday or Tuesday, for the joint school board city council meeting. And I've heard from at least 2 of you on that one, saying I can go either way. And then January 5th, I believe I've heard from 3 of you for the city tour, and that's a Friday. I just need to hear from the remaining 2 that, yes.
Well, we're
it's a-
here right now, so I'm fine with all of the dates that you had
And
proposed.
that's
to me over
exactly,
time, so.
so the 5th is good, and you are good for either the 29th or 30th. We'll see what the school board. And then hopefully by this, so the 5th, please set aside at 8:30. Come here, I'll get your reminder. And the 29th or 30th, I will reach out to the school board tomorrow, tell them we'll go either way. We'll have it here since they meet here as well. And hopefully by Friday, I'll be able to confirm a date. And the time would probably be 7 o'clock.
Okay. Works for me. You said 8:30 on the 5th, right?
8:30 on the 5th. You'll get a reminder.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything else for Mr. Marucci? All right, we'll move on to Mrs. Bond. Do you have anything to report? All right, any questions at all?
I've had enough finances for
Yes.
today.
I just had one that we could follow up on it, but just one that pointed out, well, thank you for coming also. And someone else might be able to answer this, but the wayfinding signs item 115244. I just was interested in, is that above and beyond what we approved? And
We might
just
want
some
to,
more information on
we
that.
might want to get the information from Mr. Ultimus.
If you
Yeah,
could
it
follow
includes replacement of the ones that got, the 10 or 12 that got basically damaged from vandalism. And we got some extra poles because for some reason people seem to want to hit things that are on the side of the road. So we have extra poles so we can replace them. But the part of it also was to replace all those 10 or 12 that they actually got vandalized and broken.
It didn't take them very long to do that either. It was, what, less
No, it was
than 10 days?
Within 10 days of us putting them up, they actually broke all 10 of them.
So I have to ask, they didn't seem very sturdy. We're positive it was vandalism. I mean, it seems crazy that someone went around and vandalized 10.
Yeah, because I
separate
took one of the
signs.
last ones and I went and, we looked at it. What we did was changed it so it's more of a sandwich setup now with the post. But if, based on just wind, we stood out in a, gale force wind day that was going and the posts weren't moving. But if you jump up and take a 150-pound person and, basically dangle on the top of it, snapped it in half. So we changed the whole design of how we attached it to the pole, and we haven't had a problem since, and they've been up for almost 3 months.
The original specs had them just like hanging out at the top like they were originally.
Well, we put them up that high because we're trying to keep them away from everybody, so they couldn't vandalize them, and they still found a way to do it. But there's no way the wind did that to them and snapped them like that. You might have seen one bent or something, but these were completely snapped off. In most cases, they weren't even left near the pole. So that's, the wind might have, even if the wind could have damaged them, they certainly wouldn't have picked them up and walked away with them either. So we've changed the design of them, and we haven't had a problem since we put the new ones up.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Let's move on to our city attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. With regard to the pending Department of Justice case, the city's expert report is due this Friday. In speaking with the expert this week, he had a family emergency that took place over the weekend, and so he's running about a day late in getting the report over to the city. I know I had reported last week that he was planning on getting a draft out on Tuesday, so he anticipates he'll have a draft ready by tomorrow, which will then be circulated to the council. As I previously indicated, the case is in Phase 2 discovery right now. The parties are exchanging information with regard to the November 2017 election. The Department of Justice has also requested supplemental discovery from our office. I've met with Randy now on 2 different occasions, and Randy has provided me with all of the supplemental discovery per the DOJ's request. Dangerous building hearings, we do have another round of those scheduled for January 11th, beginning at 1 o'clock here at City Hall. And I'm happy to answer any questions that any of the council members may have.
Any questions?
I have a question about the protest that was done a couple of days ago.
I heard there was one in front of City Hall yesterday.
Okay, concerning the young man, is there any way the council can see the video?
Yes, that case is currently in litigation. Our
Okay.
office is not handling that. Those matters are handled by Attorney Tim Ferrand.
Okay.
But there is a video that is available, yes.
I've reached out to Mr. Ferrand. I called him this morning, and I think he just called me back about a half hour ago. So
Okay.
I'll be able to get you and the rest of the council that answer probably tomorrow.
Okay.
And Councilwoman Owens, do you receive the status reports that Mr. Ferrand supplies to the council members? He does that periodically with any pending matters that he has. Much like how our office provides a monthly status report, including
Okay.
all the cases that we're handling, Mr. Ferrand's office does that. He doesn't necessarily do it on a monthly basis, but he does it on as things arise in a particular case. So if you haven't received those, I'll make sure that you get those.
Okay, thank you.
I don't believe he submitted anything in the last 2 months
Okay.
that I've seen.
I'll make sure, though, because I speak to Mr. Ferrand periodically. In fact, I just
Okay.
talked to him yesterday afternoon on an unrelated matter, but I'll make sure that that's provided.
Okay, thank you.
I'm good.
Anything else?
No, I'm good.
All right, let's move on to new business, and the first item is discussion of the pressure regulating valves on the operation report regarding the June 30th, 2017 event. Mr. Pangori is here to do his presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As most of you are aware, we've had a couple of situations over the past almost a year where the PRV at 8 Mile and Kelly, or 8 Mile and Gratiot, lost power for one reason or another, and it caused the PRV to malfunction during that time period. The first event occurred on December 24th, Christmas Eve of last year, when an automobile left the road and hit a power pole nearby and took out the power to the PRV. The second situation occurred on June 30th, where I believe it was weather related, but there was another power outage in that general area that caused the PRV to go down. The way the PRV is designed is during a power outage, the valves that are in there, then there's two valves. There's a 10-inch valve and a 14-inch valve. Those are designed to remain in the position that they were at when the power went down until the power comes back on. That did not occur on the June 30th event. After the June 30th event, we asked the manufacturer of the PRV to take a look at the SCADA data from the computer in the PRV to see if they could determine what happened that day and what may have caused that situation. They reviewed that data, and what it showed was over a period of about 2 or 2.5 hours of time, one of the solenoid on the 10-inch valve was losing pressure, and it actually caused the pressure in the system to increase about 20% over that time period. And we believe that that's the cause of a couple of water main breaks, maybe 2 or 3 water main breaks that occurred during that time frame that evening on the June 30th and July 1st.
Steve, they have the SCADA information in their packet, so if you wanted to refer to it for any reason.
Okay.
They have the specifics of what was
Okay.
given to you.
Thank you, Joe. So after reviewing the SCADA data, they did send a service tech out to the station, and they did take it apart, and they did find that one of the solenoids, the 10-inch solenoid, had a nick in it, and I believe there's a photograph of that nick in the package that I provided Mayor and Council. And that was the cause of the leaking that occurred in that solenoid valve that evening. So during normal operations, and while power is to those solenoids, even a small leak like that will be overcome by the way the system works. It's designed to handle fluctuations in flow and fluctuations in pressure. So that leaky valve, as long as there's power to those solenoid valves, wouldn't be a problem. But when you compound the nick that was in that valve with a power outage, that's when we ran into the situations that we did on June 30th. So to resolve that problem, there are 2 suggestions. One is that currently there's a UPS, uninterruptible power supply, in the station itself, and that UPS only runs the computer system that's in the station. and it has power for about 4 to 5 hours of time. That UPS kept the computer running and allowed us to get the data from the computer during that time period so it could be analyzed. One suggestion is to put a larger UPS in that station to not only run the computer system in the station, but also to run the solenoid valves. And that recommendation would be that the UPS would be designed for a 24-hour period of time. That should allow the solenoids to continue to run for 24 hours during a power outage, and it should give plenty of time for either the power to go back on or for the city to get a portable generator out to the site and hooked up so that it could be run for a longer period of time if, for some reason, we believe that the power outage will last longer than 24 hours.
Can I jump in real quick?
You sure can.
How come it wasn't set up where the UPS was connected to the solenoids before?
It's not the normal design of the PRVs.
Okay, so a normal. Well, and I understand. So the nick in the solenoid, or yeah, the nick caused the issue. If that wouldn't have been there, we probably wouldn't have had the issue. Correct. So, is it a very, very unusual thing that we have the nick? Because I see then that we're changing from bronze to.
Yeah, what happened in about, I think in 2015, regulations changed that required that water fittings have no lead in them at all. And up until that point, a lot of these fittings, they were brass fittings, but they had some lead in them, and that lead helped in the strength of that material. Now that there's no lead in it, the material is a little more. They're finding that it's not as strong as it was prior. So the suggestion to upgrade the solenoid to a stainless steel solenoid will also correct that problem.
So Steve, I had a question about the electrical repowering, because we had the generator down there within a half hour after we discovered the problem. So is the fact that our generator that we use consistently wasn't strong enough to sustain the electrical power to?
No, not at all, Madam Mayor. I think what happened on the June 30th event is because that wasn't caused by an accident. So the police department wasn't notified right away, and hence the water department wasn't notified right away. So it took a few hours before we became aware of the fact that there was a power outage down there. So you're right. As soon as the water department was aware of the situation, they did mobilize individuals, electrician, and they did get a generator hooked up to it.
Because the power outage was actually 3 or 4 blocks away from this particular site at 8 and Gratiot.
I don't know the extent of the power outage or,
Yeah,
where it was and where it occurred. I know it was a pretty large area down in that area of the city.
Yeah, it was.
So,
All right, any other questions? You're going on further.
no, I've pretty much summarized it. I think the next 2 agenda items go into the recommendations. I can hold off on discussing those, or I can go ahead and talk about those now.
Can you talk about December 24th?
I can briefly, yes.
There was a
And
question asked.
that's correct. And Councilman Councilman DeMonico had sent me an email and asked whether or not we had SCADA data from the December 24th event. I have not been able to get confirmation from the manufacturer as to whether that data is still available. I know that it's only available for a certain period of time and then it gets overwritten. I don't believe it's available, but we're trying to verify that.
And the difference between the 2 dates is the fact that we had a larger, wider power outage on the June 30th event than we did on the 24th.
I think
Because the 24th was just an isolated area, it was just one pole that the power had come down.
in my opinion, I think what happened on December 24th is that because it was an accident that took the power out, the police and fire and the water department was notified right away. There was a gentleman from my office and somebody from the water department that were there almost immediately, and they manually operated the valves in the PRV to bring the pressure back up and keep that running until the water department could get the generator hooked up and then operate that station normally.
Because I think despite the fact that we notified DTE of the urgency of doing it, it was still another 3 to 4 hours waiting for them
Right.
to. In fact, I don't think our power went back on until about 7 in the morning.
The next day, that's correct.
Is there any warranty warranty on the PRV for?
There is.
Because of course not like these new proposals, what we currently had, because we had 4 mains break then on June 30th, July 1st, because of malfunction, I would say with it. I mean, I don't know what would be covered under a warranty or, it was an expensive day.
There is a warranty on the station. It's a 5-year warranty. There's roughly a year left on the warranty. When the solenoids were replaced, and I think there were solenoids that were replaced after the first event in December, and then again in July after the June 30th event, the city was not charged for the replacement of those solenoids by the manufacturer of the station.
You said it's 5-year warranty?
It's a 5-year warranty.
Okay,
correct.
the reason I asked you that again is because I spoke with Dave Ely. He said it was a 4-year, and we just happened to reach the 4-year. That's why we wasn't charged.
No, I have a copy of it here. It's 5. We are 4 years
5.
into it.
Okay.
And that's maybe the misunderstanding.
Okay.
So then actually the nicked solenoid is was only 6 months old?
I don't know if that was the one that had. I don't know which one because we weren't involved in the review and analysis of the problem that happened in December. So I'm not sure what solenoid was replaced in December. There are more than one down there in the station.
Well, was the replaced one stainless steel?
No.
Because I thought you said it had to be required to.
No, the valves that are there now, the solenoids that are there now are brass. And they can be replaced in brass, but an upgrade to that is stainless steel, and that's what we're recommending that they be replaced with now.
Oh, so then bronze, which was the one with lead in it, a portion of lead then?
That, none of them did, because those regulations changed a few years ago. Once the lead was not allowed in those fittings any longer, that's when they kind of weakened, and they believe that that's causing these little nicks that are occurring.
Okay.
Our PRV was installed in 2013.
Oh, okay.
Is there any further discussion on this? Are you ready to move on to the next item?
I mean, I know
Yeah.
how I want to vote on the next item, so I
Yeah,
think he went over everything that was relevant to.
Any
Were
further?
you just asking if Mr. Pangori had anything else to say? Is that what you were asking?
I was asking
I'm
if there
sorry.
was any further discussion from council.
Oh, okay.
Did you have any more questions? All right, then let's move on to the next item, which is the approval of the ESM proposal for the PRV upgrades. Somebody want to make a motion?
Sure, Madam Mayor, I'll motion to approve the Engineered Solutions Midwest proposal dated December 1st, 2017 to upgrade the solenoid valves and uninterruptible power source in the amount of $11,015.35 and authorize the acting city manager to execute all necessary documents related to this contract.
Support.
Move to support. Any further discussion? All right, please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
All right, and the next item is also relative to it with approval of the ESM proposal for PRV annual inspection and service agreement. So do we have another year on that annual inspection then, if this is 4 years?
The warranty doesn't cover annual inspections.
Okay.
This would be a preventative, really a recommended. That's a big piece of equipment down there that's very expensive, and we would strongly recommend that there be annual inspections and investigation of it to make sure it's running properly.
All right, can we have a motion to that effect?
Sure. Madam Mayor, I'll motion to approve the Engineered Solutions Midwest proposal dated December 1st, 2017 from Efficient Fluid Incorporated for the annual inspection and service agreement, and authorize the acting city manager to execute all necessary documents related to this contract.
Do we have support?
Support.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is the approval of the universal data sharing agreement between the Michigan State Police and the infrastructure entities located in Region 4. Director McNeilans, do you want to explain this a little bit more?
I think it'd be better for myself to explain it.
Okay.
As you all recall, about 6 weeks ago, we authorized AEW to supply information to SEMCOG relative to our infrastructure location, water, sewer, catch basins, fire hydrants, and so forth. Again, this is all part of the governor's project in order to get a grasp of what the situation is of infrastructure in all of Michigan. And we have 2 pilots, one on the west side and one here in southeast Michigan, run through SEMCOG. So this data sharing agreement, what's unusual about it is we've been asked to approve it. We will never have all of the documents in our possession with respect to infrastructure in southeast Michigan. Those documents will be first in the hand of SEMCOG, and then they'll be turned over to the Michigan State Police. They want us to enter into this, I think it's a 12-page document saying that we won't release any information. We'll never have it. The only information we have is the Eastpointe information, which if people want it bad enough, they can go on the website because the sewer and the water system are on the website. But they've asked us, since we're participating, to sign this agreement saying that we will not share any other information. But believe me, we will never have information to share. So it's very unusual, but this is something the state police and the governor's office, it took them months to come up with this document, as you can tell. I mean, it's just, it really says if you even see it, you won't even tell anyone you saw it, let alone what's in it. But we won't even have it. So we need to, in order to get our money back with the information that we shared with SEMCOG, we did accrue a cost of $3,000 to share it in their format. They want us to sign this agreement. So my recommendation is, please sign it. It doesn't literally cost us anything or require any work other than you passing a motion.
With that, I'll make a motion then, Madam Mayor. I'll motion to approve the universal data sharing agreement between Michigan State Police and infrastructure entities located in Region 4, West Michigan, and Region 10, Southeast Michigan, to establish a regional asset management pilot program. Oh, I just read the paragraph above that, but it's the same thing, I think, pretty much.
It's really one and the same.
All right.
Support.
Moved, supported. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Sometime they'll put a big book and explain it all.
Can't be larger than 12 pages.
All right, item E is the collection of the 2018 summer taxes from Macomb Community College. Do we have a motion for that, to that effect?
Madam Mayor, I'll make motion to authorize the city administration to collect the 2018 Macomb Community College summer taxes on behalf of the school districts in according with MCL 380.1611 et sec and 380.1613 subsection 1 with no expense charged to the school district.
Support.
Moved and supported. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes. Item F is the appointment to the Southeast Regional Emergency Services Authority, SERISA. And we need to appoint someone to that. So there is a motion here to appoint Deputy Police Chief Eric Kaiser. Do we have a motion, please?
I did have a question on this. It's typically going to be the public safety director
Correct.
who sits on that. Now, because this isn't worded as like interim or anything like that, is there an issue if we hire, like, I don't know what's going to happen filling the position, But are they stuck as the representative for 2 years or something like that?
No, it's changeable by council upon the recommendation of the manager, so it will change if we believe there should be a change in
Okay.
the future.
That was my only
I didn't put a date on it because I don't know when the position's gonna be.
And actually, was Eric appointed as the interim
He will be tomorrow,
tomorrow?
yes.
Okay.
And in one other city, at least, I've seen police chiefs, I think I've seen fire, and I know there's a city manager as well.
And they
So-
rotate around from the cities, who's representing the police, who's representing fire.
Okay. Well, you can go if you'd like to
you
make.
can.
I'll motion to appoint Deputy Police Chief Eric Kaiser as City of Eastpointe's representative to the Southeast Regional Emergency Services Authority.
Support.
Move and support it, please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico.
Yes.
Item G is to receive and file the project summary report for the library toilet room renovations Phase 2. Is there a reason? I don't ever remember doing a receiving and file of a renovation project.
It's something that I've begun and I've done in other cities. I think it's good information in order to close the file on the project. That way you see how well the professionals, architect or engineer, the staff have performed, and the contractor.
I love the idea.
You always get questions about, you spent more than you should have, or this was really bad. It's like, everything is right in this one-page report for anyone to view in terms of the project.
And I'd assume if we had any feedback of like maybe something to add or detail a little further.
I told
open to
them,
it.
I try to keep it to one page and really with just bullet points, that way you see what was done.
Well, I don't have any right now.
And we'll be doing other projects because Mr. Pangori and I have talked about, and as they come in, the bills are submitted, payments are made, we'll be doing obviously engineering projects as well this way, and even other types of projects, could be IT or whatever.
All right, so we need a motion, both G and H refer to project summary reports.
Madam Mayor, I motion to receive and file the East Point Memorial Library Toilet Room Renovations Project Summary. Should I do them together?
I would do them separately.
Okay.
Support.
Move and support, please call the roll.
Who supported?
Mike?
Mike?
Okay.
Kleinfeld. Just kidding.
I know who Mike is, I just didn't see you.
You're looking around, so.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico.
Yes.
All right, and item H is to receive and file the project summary report for the library landscape improvements. Do we have a motion, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I motion to receive and file the East Point Memorial Library Landscape Improvements Project Summary Report.
Support?
Move and support, please call the roll.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld.
Yes.
All right, we will move to payroll and bills. Do we have a motion to pay all these bills?
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve payment of the bills in the amount of 298,000, or, yeah, 200, sorry, $928,101.19. The number is just small. so
Support?
Hard for me to.
Moved and supported, please call the roll.
Councilmember Kleinfeld,
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido,
Yes.
Councilmember DeMonico,
Yes.
Councilmember Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Pixley.
Yes. With that, we'll move to the second hearing of the public. Does anyone wish to be heard? Mr. Creech.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council, Highway Creek resident. Recently, I know Randy's not here at the present time, but I put in, well, I guess if you even want to call it FOIAs or not, at one of the other meetings, I requested some information, and hopefully, through either FOIA, I just said, there's quite a few things down here. I presented, and I'm hoping that Joe can get with Randy, and I can get a lot of questions answered, especially on the water bill itself. Because we stood here, right here, we've hashed, and we've backed, and we've beat, and we've done everything we can possibly do. And I still, as a resident, you haven't explained to me one iota of exactly why we had a 40% plus increase. And we've talked about rates, we've talked about everything. But I guess with the information that I don't understand, and after we got done with it tonight, it says fund balances of 2017 and 18. It's got ending fund balance of water, $45,100,127. What is this fund? What does this mean? Do we have the money? Don't we have the money? Where is the money at? I've asked this many, many times, and I never have got it right, but I'm looking right at your information on the budget. I've asked this to Randy, so I want to come down, and I said, I want to know the department out. As I said before, too, in one of the best ones right here, it's got water and sewer fund. This is under total revenues. I love this one. Under expenditures, personal services, pension, supplies, other charges, $12,152,105. Madam Mayor, not too long ago, you made a statement, Mr. Creech, you just don't understand. Well, how can I understand how to break something down if I can't give you the answers? I've had 5 FOIAs just to find out between 2 buildings, between Spindler and Memorial Park, and I still haven't got the total answer. All I want to know is the breakdown of exactly why. And I think a lot of the other residents, no matter who they are, the biggest thing that they're talking about right now is their water bill. I mean, I can look at it, and I've got more information probably than anyone on the council's got about a water bill. And I can't understand it. Please, help me out, as I said before, too. I'm going to get the hard copies over here about the budget again, too, and we'll go through it. But if you could possibly, that's why I was hoping Randy would be here, but I understand he can't be, of what this $45,100,127, it says water and sewer fund. It says fund balance. And yet, that gentleman right here tonight, he didn't say that. I don't think he said, I hope everybody was paying attention because I didn't hear him mention figures like this. Please, Madam Mayor, as I said, hopefully Randy will come back around and Joe and something. And as I said, I hope that the rest, as I turn this information in and as I get it to, I hope the council can see it so they can answer the questions. Please, just as I say, give us a reason of why the water bill can possibly. I understand we talked about a lot of things here tonight. But it still doesn't make any sense to why our water bill had a 40% increase. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to be heard?
Again, thank you for having us. And lastly, I'd like to just say tax season obviously is 1 month away. That's when people start getting money for taxes and spending things on spending money that they're not usually able to spend. So if you all can move expeditiously on this parking lot situation, it would be greatly appreciated on behalf of Albert's Furniture. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Sir? And I don't know
Toma.
I know you were here at the last council meeting. I don't know whether you understand. You have each person that's coming up to speak has 3 minutes, and I will usually notify you at 2.5 minutes that you have 30 seconds left.
Okay. Hidel Toma, Eastpointe. This is for a Sabu who's in Berry Manor. He's disabled. He asked me to give him some advice about living in this country. He just moved here. I left off at number 5. Mr. Sabu, the CIA is a terrorist organization that have been caught selling drugs and weapons and assassinating presidents and witnesses with lawsuits against them. They are famous for suiciding people, so tell your family you do not want to kill yourself. That way, if you're suicided, it's on video somewhere. Number 6, don't ever question the Holocaust in any detail. You will be called an anti-Semite. The term was created by the Israeli lobby, so just go along to get along. Number 7, 2 criminal gangs run America They're called the Republican and Democrat Party. They're akin to the Bloods and Crips. They do nothing but get fat and rich, and they fight each other, and they don't want any other party winning. So if you see a ticket that says Republican and Democrat, run away and always vote the Libertarian and Green Party. Number 8, don't ever question 9/11. Forget about the facts that planes cannot bring down towers. They cannot cut through steel like butter. Even when birds hit planes, they fall apart. Firefighters heard explosions in the building before the plane hit. They were suicided. They were never called to testify on the 9/11 Commission. The last person to leave the 9/11 towers testified he heard explosions before the plane hit it. So don't question 9/11, because you'll be a conspiracy theorist, which is a term created by the CIA after Kennedy was killed to make fun of people who had a different opinion than the official version. Number 9, don't ever question our media. Never mind is filtered through the CIA first. Thousands of investigative journalists have been killed for reporting against the government and the CIA, including a man named Danny Casolaro. You will be called a conspiracy theorist. And finally, number 10, you will hear support the troops a lot in America, but the truth is we left behind thousands of POWs, MIAs in the Vietnam, Korea, and the Cold War. Sightings of these men continue to this day, and the government covered it up and threatened the families for exposing the cover-up. Just ask the families of David Hrdlicka and William Milliner. They were threatened not to find their loved ones. Thank you very much. These are the top 10 for Sabu and Berry Manor.
Thank you, sir. Does anyone else wish to be heard? Anyone else? Seeing none, the hearing of the public is closed. We'll move on to mayor and council reports. Let's start with Mr. DeMonico tonight.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I would like to thank John. Thank you. It was a pleasure working with you here, and we're both U of M Dearborn grads. I know I missed the Dearborn earlier. Second, thanks, Joe, for pushing all the PRV stuff forward. I'm very excited to see that we're moving on that to fix that. That was, of course, a very big issue twice now in the city, so I'm glad that we'll hopefully, knock on wood, have a permanent fix. To Harvey Creech, first, I don't have all the finance answers, but the $45 million that you see for the water and sewer fund is the worth of our pipes in the ground. There's a couple separate reports in the audit. There's not $45 million in cash sitting around somewhere. Never has been. So there is a lot of reports in the audit. Hopefully we can get you a copy. Also, yesterday I went to an event in Oak Park. They're looking at improving their 9-mile, and I thought this was very interesting. They're going to do a road diet. They're putting a couple pocket parks and bike lanes and some greenery. Just was a very creative thing. I'll send some information on once I get a couple links. But I thought it was a couple real creative things. They even said like a road diet is like the cheapest thing you can do to improve. It improves business because everyone slows down and then there's more parking and things like that. I thought it'd be something pretty interesting to visit. Then also, I'm sure everyone's well aware that our Congress is looking at our taxes, and it seems like most folks are not very happy with that proposal, and if you're not, I hope you've been voting, and if you're not, please vote, even if you're not extremely mad at some proposal that Congress or the City Council is doing. Just vote every time, and then maybe 20 years from now we wouldn't have to worry about when you're extremely mad. So that's all, just vote is all I'm saying. And we had a very successful, if you're here for the tree lighting, a ton of folks here. If you haven't been to it, I recommend it. Come out, bring kids to see Santa. We sing some carols. Luckily, they don't give the city council a microphone. And that's all I had. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everyone. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Ms. Owens.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. First, I would like to say thank you for your service for, so long in Eastpointe. I, really want to thank you for all you've done. I haven't known you long, but the time I have known you, I really do honor the things that you have done, so I appreciate you. And I also want to say I went to Harper Woods. I met up with some people in Harper Woods. I met the mayor there, also the economic developer, and they're trying to reconstruct and, redo Kelly Road and try to, uplift that area and things like that. And so I go to different cities and see what they're doing to improve their streets and things like that, so I can get some of those ideas and bring it to Eastpointe as well. And the people who are doing things outside of the city and where they're neighboring cities, it's a good look for us. So for Harper Woods to be building up Kelly Road, and they're getting 2 new restaurants right there on 8 Mile, right where Eastland Mall is, it's going to be good for our city as well, to get more businesses to come to our city as well. And I also want to say I went to Love Life Church. It's also in Eastpointe in Topher. They were doing a warming center, and we were actually feeding the homeless this Saturday. So I was able to do that. Actually, it was all week. So Macomb has something where they have warming centers, and each church does it every week. And so I went there for a coalition, the drug coalition that we're trying to start in Eastpointe. And I was able to meet the pastor there, and he invited me to come help the homeless, in which I did Sunday. And so we, fed the homeless, and I was able to do that, and it made me feel so much better. So please, if you know of any warming centers, go out and help the homeless. So, we all have warm homes to go to when we leave here. We don't want for anything. So let's go out and help those that are less fortunate. That's what this season is about. Eastside Community Church, which I attend, had a play this weekend when my daughters were in, and it's called Tabitha's Journey. It was just talking about the struggles that we deal with in this world and how she ended up finding Jesus. And why I said that is because our community has a lot. We have a lot of churches, and that's the heart of the city. So if you don't belong to a church, find one. If you don't have to be a member, but we have a lot of things that's going on in the city. You just have to go online and, just travel around the city. It's a lot of good things that you want to just pay attention to. Everything, that you see isn't bad. We have to focus on the good. So those things will, spread, and people will come to Eastpointe. And also, I want to just say the decorations, the people who are responsible for the decorations, beautiful, good job. I go down Gratiot, see the lights, and see everything done. I am so proud to be a part of the city, and so that's all I have.
Thank you. So, Mr. Kleinfeld?
Sure. I want to say thank you to Commander McNeilance, or Director, for your service. Also, I want to say I hope that Randy Blum feels better.
Yes.
But thank you for coming, Ms. Bond, to our meeting tonight. It was a pleasure sitting next to you. Regarding I do encourage for people who have questions about the finances. The budgets are online, and I think you said the audit already is.
I'm 99% sure it's online, and if it's not, it surely will be tomorrow, but I'm
Usually as soon as it's finalized, it's
yeah, I believe it's online right now.
Yeah, the audit does provide a lot of insight. Cardi is correct with because I was confused when I first found fund balance, and I don't think it was always reported like that. I think there were changes in the reporting requirements that make it sound like we have more, she's nodding her head, yes, that make it sound like we have more than we actually do. So we have to report assets as if we have it on cash, which is a little misleading. So if you have questions regarding that, I know that Cardi, I feel like he probably understands the number side of it more, but I'm educating myself. Feel free to email us, because I think, if I can answer your questions, I will. And I encourage everyone to look online for that information. And lastly, just want to say happy holidays to everyone. Be safe and have a good New Year.
You too, thank you.
And Mrs. Lucido.
Well, I'd like to start out this evening by congratulating Pace on a wonderful job on their radio show. It's a Wonderful Life they did last Saturday. They did a great job. My son really enjoyed it. He's never seen the movie, so it was even a better experience for him. Also, I would like to congratulate Mr. McNeilance on his retirement. Hopefully you enjoy yourself. From what my parents say, they say you get busier once you retire, so good luck with that. And also, I would like to wish my middle child, he's turning 12 on Christmas Eve, a happy birthday. And I would also like to wish everyone a happy holiday and a happy New Year. And that'll be it for this evening.
Thank you. Well, I would like to thank you for coming to the radio show. It was really a success. We probably had about 300 people, and it was exciting. And more than anything, we were doing it as a fundraiser for scholarships for criminal justice for kids from Eastpointe. So we raised a considerable amount of money, and today the police union surprised us with a $500 donation to add to our scholarship funds. So we were really very excited. And sir, Mr. McNeilans, we are going to miss you. You're always very quiet over there, but I feel really comfortable seeing you over there in a uniform. I've been around a long time, so I remember some incidents that we've had before we had a police officer in our place at all times. So thank you very much. I think that that's probably in addition to the time that you spent during the day. So thank you so much for coming and never missing an opportunity to be with us at night. I think that the tree lighting this year was one of the best events we've had in a long time. We had a great crowd. There was no problems whatsoever, and everybody was busy either making s'mores or lining up or whatever, but it was a great crowd of people. And next year we will have microphones for you, Cardis. And I have to thank your son for helping us give the key. So next year it'll be your daughter's turn.
Okay.
And I guess that's all that I have for tonight. I'd like to wish everybody, and Mr. Creech, very often the FOIA that you turn in, you got to be really careful of the language because it's very specific about what information you will be provided. So be very specific about exactly what it is that you're wanting and the time period for the information that you're requesting, because they can only give you what's on your paper. So be very careful about that. All right, and I don't have anything else. I just wish everybody, oh, Sarah, I wish your foot well.
Thank you.
We seem to be having problems with women in their feet. But I will entertain a motion to go into closed session for attorney-client privilege. We're still going to be doing that tonight?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
All right, Madam Mayor, I'll motion to go into closed session for attorney-client privilege communication regarding the DOJ pending litigation.
We have support. Please call the roll.
Councilmember DeMonico?
Yes.
Councilmember Kleinfeld?
Yes.
Councilmember Lucido?
Yes.
Councilmember Owens?
Yes.
Mayor Pixley?
Yes. So we'll be there at 8:30.